What if I told you that the most successful people in the world share one mental habit that costs nothing to adopt? They act as if everything always works out for them, even when life gets hard. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't often comes down to one thing: their mindset. Today, we're diving deep into a life-changing philosophy that has transformed countless lives. Acting as if everything works out for you isn't about blind optimism. It's about adopting a powerful mental framework that attracts opportunities and solutions rather than more problems. Most people live their lives in a constant state of worry. They believe success is something that happens to others. When challenges arise, and they always do, they immediately assume the worst. This negative expectation actually creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your mind looks for evidence to confirm what you already believe. Think about it. How often have you started your day worried something would go wrong, only to find yourself saying, "I knew this would happen"? When it does, this mental pattern traps you in a cycle of disappointment and missed opportunities. But there is a better way. The power of assumption. Assumptions rule our lives in ways most people never realize. When you wake up in the morning, what's the first assumption that crosses your mind? Do you assume the day ahead will bring problems to solve or opportunities to seize? This single morning thought sets the trajectory for everything that follows. I've spent decades studying the most successful individuals across every field imaginable. Do you know what separates them from everyone else? It's not talent. It's not connections. It's not even hard work, though that certainly plays a part. The true differentiator is their baseline assumption about how the world works. Average people assume life is happening to them. Exceptional people assume life is happening for them. This distinction might seem subtle, but its implications are profound. Your brain is the most sophisticated filter on the planet. Every second, it processes millions of bits of information, deciding what deserves your conscious attention and what doesn't. And here's the critical part. This filtering happens based on your assumptions and expectations. When you assume things will work out, your brain automatically begins searching for evidence to support that assumption. Think about the last problem you faced. Did you immediately think, "Here we go again, another disaster"? Or did you think, "This is challenging, but I'll find a way through"? The difference between these two responses isn't just emotional, it's neurological. The first assumption activates your brain's threat response, narrowing your focus and limiting your creative problem-solving abilities. The second activates your brain's exploratory systems, opening you to possibilities you might otherwise miss. This isn't positive thinking, it's strategic assumption. You're not denying reality, you're choosing which aspects of reality deserve your focus. Problems exist either way. The question is whether you see them as permanent roadblocks or temporary challenges. I remember working with a business owner who lost his largest client, representing nearly 40% of his revenue, with absolutely no warning. Many in his position would have panicked, assumed the worst, and perhaps even closed their doors. But this particular individual had trained himself to operate from a different assumption. Instead of saying, "This is devastating," he said, "This is clarifying." He assumed this apparent setback was actually setting him up for something better. Within 3 months, he had not only replaced the lost business, but had diversified his client base so he'd never again be vulnerable to a single client's decisions. 5 years later, his company had quadrupled in size. The initial loss, which seemed catastrophic at the time, became the catalyst for extraordinary growth. Was he just lucky? Absolutely not. His assumption that things would work out didn't magically solve his problems. What it did was prime his brain to spot solutions rather than spiral into panic and defeat. While his competitors might have seen only closed doors, he saw openings they missed entirely. The power of this approach becomes even more evident during periods of massive change and uncertainty. When markets shift, technologies evolve, or unexpected crises emerge, most people retreat into fear. They assume these changes spell disaster and act accordingly, cutting back, playing it safe, focusing on survival rather than opportunity. but those who assume things work out for them ask different questions. How is this change creating new possibilities? What needs exist now that didn't before? How can I position myself to provide solutions in this new landscape? Look at any period of economic disruption throughout history. While most lost ground, there were always those who emerged stronger than before. The difference wasn't their circumstances, it was their assumptions about what those circumstances meant and what possibilities existed within them. Now, let me be clear. Assuming things will work out doesn't mean sitting back and waiting for success to fall in your lap. Quite the opposite. It means taking bold, decisive action because you're operating from a place of opportunity rather than fear. It means pushing forward when others retreat, investing when others withhold, creating when others are paralyzed by uncertainty. Think about your own life. Can you recall a time when something that initially seemed negative ultimately led to something better? Perhaps a job loss that forced you to pursue the business you'd always dreamed of starting, or a relationship ending that made space for someone far more aligned with your values, or a health challenge that transformed your priorities and perspective. These experiences aren't coincidences. They're evidence of a pattern that exists throughout your life if you're willing to see it. Things have always worked out, though rarely in the way you initially expected. Understanding this pattern allows you to approach future challenges with a different baseline assumption. Instead of thinking, "This is terrible," you can think, "This is interesting. I wonder where it's leading me." This single shift in assumption changes everything: your stress levels, your creativity, your resilience, and ultimately, your outcomes. It turns problems into stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. And most importantly, it puts you in control of your response to life rather than at the mercy of circumstances. Training your opportunity. Radar. Most people move through life with their opportunity radar switched firmly to the off position. They complain about the lack of chances, the scarcity of good breaks, and how all the best opportunities seem to go to others. Meanwhile, they're walking right past golden possibilities every single day without even noticing them. I want you to imagine for a moment that you're walking down a busy street in a major city. What do you notice? The traffic? The noise? The buildings? Now imagine that same street through the eyes of different specialists. The architect sees structural details you'd never notice. The urban planner sees traffic flow patterns. The entrepreneur sees vacant storefronts and untapped market potential. The historian sees layers of development spanning centuries. Same street, completely different perceptions. Your opportunity radar works the same way. It picks up only what you've trained it to recognize. And here's the crucial point. Most people have inadvertently trained their radar to spot problems, threats, and reasons why things won't work. They're experts at identifying obstacles, but novices at recognizing possibilities. This isn't their fault. Our brains evolved primarily to keep us safe, not to make us successful. The primitive part of your brain, the part that controls your automatic responses, is constantly scanning for danger. It's hyper-vigilant about potential threats and dismissive of potential rewards. This made perfect sense in a world where physical survival was the primary concern. But in today's world, this default setting holds you back. Training your opportunity radar means consciously overriding this default. It means deliberately looking for possibilities where others see only problems. It means asking, "What's good about this?" when facing situations that seem entirely negative. It means constantly questioning your initial pessimistic interpretations of events. I've known individuals who turned industry-wide disruptions into personal fortunes because they saw openings while their peers saw only collapse. I've watched professionals transform career setbacks into launching pads for greater success because they immediately began searching for the opportunity rather than lamenting the loss. I've seen entrepreneurs build thriving businesses in supposedly dying industries because their opportunity radar detected unmet needs that others overlooked. The difference wasn't their circumstances. The difference was their radar settings. How do you recalibrate your own opportunity radar? It begins with a simple but powerful practice, the opportunity audit. Each evening, ask yourself, what opportunities did I notice today? What possibilities emerged that I might not have seen before? What doors might be opening that I initially perceived as closing? At first, this might feel forced or artificial. You might struggle to identify any opportunities at all. This is normal. You're retraining a system that's been operating on automatic for years or even decades. But with consistent practice, something remarkable begins to happen. Your brain starts to recognize that opportunities are valuable data points worth noting. It begins scanning for them automatically, just as it currently scans for problems and threats. Another powerful technique is to surround yourself with opportunity-focused individuals. The human brain contains specialized mirror neurons that cause us to unconsciously adopt the mental patterns of those around us. When you regularly interact with people who instinctively spot opportunities, your brain begins mimicking this ability. Consider also how you process information about your field or industry. Most people consume news and updates with a threat detection mindset. They're looking for problems to avoid rather than opportunities to pursue. Try this experiment. The next time you read industry news or attend a conference, consciously approach every piece of information with the question, "Where's the opportunity in this?" This simple reframing can reveal possibilities that remain completely invisible to your competitors. Remember that opportunities rarely arrive fully formed and labeled. They typically appear first as anomalies, things that don't quite fit the established patterns. The customer complaint that points to an unmet need in the market. The technological glitch that suggests a better approach. The offhand comment that reveals a gap in available services. Training your opportunity radar means becoming fascinated by these anomalies rather than dismissing them. It's also critical to understand that opportunity detection requires margin in your life. When you're constantly rushing from one crisis to the next, operating in perpetual reaction mode, your radar simply can't function properly. Creating space for reflection, contemplation, and strategic thinking isn't a luxury. It's an essential practice for anyone serious about spotting and seizing opportunities. Perhaps most importantly, training your opportunity radar requires maintaining what psychologists call realistic optimism. This isn't blind positivity that ignores real problems. It's the balanced perspective that acknowledges challenges while simultaneously searching for the openings within them. It's the mindset that says, "This is difficult, and there's a way through that might lead to something even better." Think about the most successful people you know personally. I guarantee they have highly developed opportunity radars. They see possibilities where others see dead ends. They detect emerging trends before they become obvious. They connect seemingly unrelated developments into valuable insights. This isn't magical thinking. It's a trained perceptual skill that you can develop with practice and persistence. The world is abundant with opportunities. They exist in every industry, every market shift, every technological development, and, yes, every crisis. The opportunities themselves aren't scarce. What's scarce is the ability to perceive them. Develop this ability, and you'll never look at challenges the same way again. The responsibility principle. There's a word I want you to consider carefully: responsibility. Most people hear this word and immediately think of burden, obligation, or even blame. But I want you to see it differently. Break it apart, and what do you get? Responsibility. The ability to choose your response. This single principle has the power to transform your entire life. It's deceptively simple yet profoundly impactful. While you cannot control everything that happens to you, you always control how you respond to what happens. The most successful individuals throughout history understood this principle at their core. They faced circumstances at least as challenging as yours, often far more difficult, yet they consistently chose responses that moved them forward rather than held them back. Consider the reality we all face. Every day brings a mixture of events, some positive, some negative, many neutral. Some of these events are within your control, but many are not. The economy shifts. Companies downsize. Relationships change. Technologies disrupt industries. Health challenges emerge. These things happen to everyone. What separates extraordinary lives from ordinary ones isn't the ratio of good to bad events. It's the pattern of responses to those events. Average people respond reactively, based on emotion and immediate circumstances. Exceptional people respond intentionally, based on principles and long-term vision. When something bad happens, most people immediately fall into one of two traps. The first is the victim trap. Why is this happening to me? It's not fair. Someone should fix this. The second is the blame trap. This is someone else's fault. They should have prevented this. They need to make it right. Both responses might feel justified in the moment, but here's what they have in common. They place the power somewhere outside yourself. They position you as a passive recipient of circumstances rather than an active creator of outcomes. They focus your energy on what you can't control rather than what you can. The responsibility principle offers a completely different approach. When facing any challenging situation, it prompts you to ask, what can I do with this? How can I use this? What response would move me toward my goals rather than away from them? I once worked with a salesperson who lost a major account through no fault of his own. The client had been acquired by another company that had an existing relationship with a competitor. This salesperson had every reason to feel victimized. The situation was entirely beyond his control and represented a significant financial loss. But rather than dwelling on the unfairness, he immediately asked himself, how can I respond in a way that creates value from this situation? He sent a gracious note to his contact, expressing appreciation for their past business and offering assistance during the transition if needed. He then used the newly available time in his schedule to deepen relationships with existing clients and accelerate outreach to prospects he'd been meaning to contact. Within 3 months, he had not only replaced the lost business, but had established relationships that proved more stable and profitable than the account he'd lost. Was this luck? Absolutely not. It was the direct result of choosing a productive response to a challenging situation. This principle becomes even more powerful when you extend it beyond external events to include your internal states. Most people believe they have little control over their emotions and thoughts. I can't help feeling angry. I can't stop worrying about this. I'm just not motivated right now. But the responsibility principle reveals these as choices, not conditions. You may not control the initial emotional reaction to an event. That's often automatic. But you absolutely control what happens next. You decide whether to nurture the emotion or redirect it. You decide which thoughts to focus on and which to let go. You decide whether to act based on momentary feelings or enduring values. This level of responsibility requires development. It's a muscle that strengthens with use. Each time you pause between stimulus and response, between what happens and what you do about it, you create space for choice. In that space lies your freedom and your power. The most practical application of this principle comes in daily decision-making. When faced with any situation, large or small, ask yourself, is my response moving me toward the life I want to create or away from it? Is it expanding my possibilities or limiting them? Is it strengthening my position or weakening it? These questions shift your focus from the circumstances themselves to your power within them. They remind you that while events may limit your options, they never eliminate your ability to choose among the options that remain. Perhaps most importantly, the responsibility principle liberates you from the exhausting burden of trying to control the uncontrollable. So much of our stress comes from fighting against reality, wishing things were different than they are, trying to change people who don't want to change, attempting to prevent the inevitable. Responsibility offers a different approach. It says, this is what is. Now, what's the most powerful thing I can do with what is? This acceptance isn't resignation or surrender. It's the clear-eyed recognition of reality that precedes effective action. Think about areas in your life where you feel stuck or frustrated. Are you focusing on aspects you can't control? Are you waiting for circumstances to change before you take action? Are you allowing your responses to be dictated by emotion rather than intention? Reclaiming your responsibility in these areas won't necessarily change the external situation immediately, but it will change your relationship to that situation. It will restore your sense of agency and power, and ultimately it will open pathways to outcomes that remain invisible when you're caught in victimhood or blame. Remember this: your life is shaped not by what happens to you, but by how you respond to what happens. This principle has transformed countless lives throughout history. It can transform yours too, starting today, starting now, with your very next response. Creating your own luck. Let's talk about luck. Some people seem to have it in abundance, while others can't catch a break. But is luck really just random chance, or is there something deeper going on? I've spent years studying what separates the consistently lucky from the perpetually unlucky. The findings might surprise you. What we casually call luck is actually a predictable outcome of specific mindsets and behaviors. In other words, luck isn't something that happens to you. It's something you create. Consider two individuals facing identical circumstances. One sees opportunity at every turn, while the other encounters nothing but obstacles. Same external. Reality, completely different experiences. What explains this difference? It comes down to how they've programmed their minds to process the world around them. The truth is, luck isn't magical or mysterious. It's manufactured through consistent patterns of thought and action. When researchers study people who self-identify as lucky, they discover these individuals share several key characteristics that have nothing to do with chance and everything to do with choice. First, lucky people maintain an unusual openness to new experiences. While most of us develop routines and stick to them rigidly, the consistently lucky regularly step outside their comfort zones. They try new restaurants, take different routes to work, strike up conversations with strangers, and explore unfamiliar ideas. Each of these small deviations from routine exponentially increases their exposure to potential opportunities. Think about it. How many life-changing moments began with something unexpected? The job offer that came through a casual conversation. The business idea sparked by an article you wouldn't normally read. The relationship that began with a chance encounter. When you stick exclusively to familiar patterns, you dramatically reduce the possibility of fortunate accidents. Second, lucky people pay extraordinary attention to their intuition. They've learned to recognize and trust those quiet internal signals that often precede logical understanding. While others dismiss their hunches, the consistently lucky have trained themselves to notice these subtle promptings and act on them. This isn't mystical, it's neurological. Your brain processes vast amounts of information below the threshold of conscious awareness. Sometimes it recognizes patterns and makes connections before your conscious mind can articulate them. That feeling of something doesn't seem right, or this feels like the right direction, is your brain communicating insights it hasn't yet organized into logical thoughts. Lucky people have simply learned to listen to these communications rather than dismiss them. Third, lucky people maintain relentlessly positive expectations. They assume things will work out favorably, even without knowing exactly how. This positive expectancy isn't wishful thinking. It's a strategic filter that determines what they notice and what they overlook. When you expect positive outcomes, you become attuned to opportunities and possibilities that others miss entirely. Your reticular activating system, the part of your brain that decides what information reaches your conscious awareness, prioritizes data that confirms your expectations. Expect problems, and you'll find them everywhere. Expect opportunities, and suddenly they appear around every corner. Fourth, lucky people possess an extraordinary ability to transform setbacks into stepping stones. Where others see failure, they see feedback. Where others see endings, they see beginnings. Where others see rejection, they see redirection. I once worked with an entrepreneur whose first business failed spectacularly. Rather than retreating into safety, he carefully analyzed what went wrong and launched a second venture that leveraged those hard-earned lessons. Within 3 years, that business was valued at over 8 figures. Was he lucky? Only if you consider luck to be the inevitable outcome of responding productively to setbacks. Fifth, lucky people take consistent action. They understand that opportunities rarely come knocking uninvited. They initiate, engage, follow up, and persist where others hesitate, withdraw, forget, or quit. This continuous forward motion exponentially increases their surface area for lucky encounters. Think about the lottery. Your chances of winning without buying a ticket are precisely 0. Your chances with a ticket are infinitesimally small, but still infinitely larger than zero. Lucky people are constantly buying tickets in the opportunity lottery through their actions. The more tickets they purchase, the more likely they are to win. The beautiful thing about this understanding of luck is that it puts you in control. You're no longer waiting for fortunate circumstances to randomly appear. You're actively creating the conditions that make them not just possible but probable. Start practicing these 5 patterns: openness to new experiences, attention to intuition, positive expectancy, transformative response to setbacks, and consistent action. You'll be amazed at how quickly your luck begins to change. Remember, the ultimate determinant of your luck isn't some mysterious cosmic force. It's the set of mental habits you bring to each day, each challenge, and each interaction. When you act as if everything works out for you, you set in motion forces that make that assumption increasingly accurate over time. So stop waiting for your luck to change. Start changing the way you create your luck, because the truth is, luck isn't what happens to you. Luck is what you happen to create through the way you think and act each day. The momentum of positive action. There's a fundamental law of physics that applies just as powerfully to human psychology. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. When you understand and apply this principle to your mindset and actions, you unlock one of the most powerful forces for positive change available to you. Let me explain what I mean by momentum in the context of personal growth and success. Have you ever noticed how the first day of a new habit is always the hardest? Whether it's beginning an exercise routine, implementing a new business practice, or changing your communication patterns, that initial effort requires tremendous energy. But if you push through and continue the behavior for several days or weeks, something remarkable happens. It begins to feel easier, more natural, even automatic. This is the power of momentum. What begins as a conscious, effortful choice gradually transforms into an unconscious, effortless pattern. The neural pathways in your brain actually restructure themselves to make the new behavior your default response. Scientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself based on repeated experience. When you consistently act as if things will work out, you're not just adopting a temporary mindset, you're literally rewiring your brain to make this perspective your automatic response to challenges. You're creating powerful momentum that carries you through difficulties that would have once stopped you cold. Think about learning to drive. Remember how overwhelming it seemed. Initially, so many things to monitor simultaneously: the road, your speed, the mirrors, the pedals, the steering wheel. The cognitive load was exhausting. But now, you can drive for hours while holding complex conversations or thinking about completely unrelated matters. The driving behaviors have become so automatic that they require almost no conscious attention. The same principle applies to your mental habits. At first, choosing to focus on solutions rather than problems requires deliberate effort. Interpreting setbacks as temporary and instructive rather than permanent and defining feels unnatural. Maintaining positive expectations in the face of challenges goes against your habitual responses. But here's the extraordinary thing. Each time you make these choices, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with them. What began as a conscious decision gradually becomes your unconscious default. The momentum builds until maintaining this solution-focused mindset requires less effort than returning to your old patterns of thought. This momentum creates a positive spiral in your life. Better mental habits lead to better responses to challenges. Better responses lead to better outcomes. Better outcomes reinforce your positive expectations. Stronger positive expectations lead to even better responses, and the cycle continues, gathering force with each repetition. I've witnessed this phenomenon in countless individuals across every field imaginable. The entrepreneur who pushes through initial failures until perseverance becomes second nature. The salesperson who continues making calls through rejection until resilience becomes their default state. The leader who practices new communication skills until they flow naturally in every interaction. The key insight is this: momentum must be built before it can be felt. You don't wait until you feel motivated to start. You start in order to create the momentum that produces motivation. You don't wait until positive thinking feels natural. You practice positive thinking until it becomes natural. You don't wait until you've mastered a skill to take action. You take action to develop mastery. This principle explains why so many people remain stuck in patterns they desperately want to change. They attempt a new approach once or twice, feel the intense effort it requires, and conclude, "This isn't working," or "This isn't me." What they fail to understand is that this initial resistance is not evidence of failure. It's an essential part of the process. The resistance itself is the raw material from which momentum is built. Think about pushing a stalled car. The first few feet require tremendous effort, but once the car begins moving, maintaining and increasing its speed becomes progressively easier. Giving up during those first few feet guarantees failure. Pushing through creates the conditions for success. The same applies to creating momentum in your thought patterns and behaviors. The initial resistance you feel when adopting a solution-focused mindset isn't a sign that the approach is wrong for you. It's simply the natural friction that precedes momentum. Push through it consistently, and what once required tremendous effort will eventually become your path of least resistance. This understanding transforms how you approach change in your life. Instead of making sporadic, dramatic efforts followed by returns to old patterns, you focus on consistent, sustainable actions that build momentum over time. You recognize that small actions maintained consistently create more lasting change than large actions performed occasionally. When you act as if things will work out, even when you don't fully believe it yet, you're not being inauthentic. You're creating the momentum that will eventually make this perspective your authentic response. You're not pretending, you're practicing. And with sufficient practice, what once felt like pretense becomes genuine. The beauty of momentum is that once established, it carries you through periods when your motivation wanes or your energy flags. Just as a flywheel continues turning even when the initial force is removed, your established patterns of thought and action continue even when circumstances temporarily challenge your resolve. Start building this momentum today. Choose one area where acting as if things will work out would most significantly impact your life. Commit to maintaining this perspective consistently for 30 days, especially when it feels most difficult. Watch what happens as the momentum begins to build and carry you forward. The attraction principle. There's a phenomenon I've observed throughout decades of studying human achievement that has profound implications for your success. I call it the attraction principle, and understanding it will transform not just your results, but the very ease with which you attain them. Here's the principle in its simplest form. People, opportunities, and resources naturally flow toward individuals who maintain a positive, solution-focused mindset, especially in the face of challenges. This isn't mystical thinking or wishful philosophy. It's practical psychology with observable, predictable outcomes. Think about the people in your own life. Who do you most enjoy spending time with? Who do you go out of your way to help? Who would you recommend for opportunities? Who would you trust with important responsibilities or investments? Almost invariably, these are individuals who bring positive energy to situations rather than drain it. People who focus on possibilities rather than problems, solutions rather than complaints. This natural human preference creates a powerful advantage for those who consistently act as if things will work out. They become attraction points for the very connections, resources, and opportunities that accelerate success. Meanwhile, those who approach life with pessimism, complaint, and defeat gradually find themselves increasingly isolated from the networks and resources they need most. I've watched this principle play out countless times across every industry and field of endeavor. The consultant who approaches challenges with confident optimism attracts more clients than the one with equal skills but a negative outlook. The job candidate who conveys belief in their ability to succeed receives more offers than equally qualified candidates who project doubt. The entrepreneur who maintains conviction in their vision secures funding more easily than those who communicate uncertainty. Why does this happen? Because humans are intuitive decision makers. Beneath our logical assessments lies a deeper evaluation system that asks, how does this person make me feel about the future? Do they expand my sense of what's possible or contract it? Do they energize me or deplete me? We're drawn to those who enhance our own sense of possibility and repelled by those who diminish it. This happens largely unconsciously, but its effects are powerfully real. The person who acts as if things will work out creates a field of positive expectancy that others can feel and want to participate in. Consider two team members facing the same challenging project. One says, "This is impossible with our current resources and timeline. We're setting ourselves up for failure." The other says, "This is challenging, but I believe we can find a way to make it work. Let's focus on what's possible with what we have." Who would you rather work with? Who would you be more likely to support, resource, and invest in? The difference isn't just emotional, it's practical. The person who expects positive outcomes stays engaged, creative, and solution-focused. The person who expects failure withdraws mentally and emotionally, limiting their creative capacity precisely when it's most needed. Others sense this difference and naturally align themselves with those who remain positively engaged. This principle operates just as powerfully in personal relationships as in professional contexts. Think about the friend who calls only to complain, putting the full weight of their problems on your shoulders without any interest in solutions. Compare them to the friend who might share challenges, but always with an eye toward resolution and growth. Which relationship energizes you? Which depletes you? Which person do you make time for even when your schedule is packed? Now, let me be absolutely clear about what this principle is not. It is not about artificial positivity that denies reality. It is not about putting on a happy face while ignoring genuine problems. It is not about magical thinking that assumes challenges will resolve themselves without effort. True positive expectancy acknowledges reality completely, including its difficulties and constraints, but refuses to be defined by them. It says, "Yes, this is the situation. Now, what can we do with it? What possibilities exist that we haven't yet explored? What approaches might work that we haven't yet tried?" This orientation makes you magnetic in both subtle and obvious ways. Subtly, it affects how people perceive and respond to you in daily interactions. Obviously, it determines whether people recommend you, remember you, or reach out to you when opportunities arise. I've seen individuals with modest talents achieve extraordinary success through the consistent application of this principle. I've also seen highly talented individuals struggle continuously because they repel the very opportunities and connections they need most through their negative expectancy. The attraction principle also explains why success tends to compound over time. Initial positive outcomes reinforce positive expectations, which enhance attractive force, which generates more positive outcomes, which further strengthen positive expectations. This virtuous cycle accelerates with each rotation, creating momentum that can carry you to heights that seem miraculous to outside observers. The wonderful thing about this principle is that it's entirely within your control. You can begin implementing it immediately, regardless of your current circumstances or past results. You don't need anyone's permission or cooperation. You don't need additional resources or credentials. You simply need to make a conscious choice about how you'll frame challenges and approach possibilities. Start noticing how you communicate about your projects, goals, and challenges. Do your words and energy attract others to your vision or repel them from it? Do you speak in ways that make people want to help you succeed or distance themselves from potential failure? Do you focus conversations on possibilities or limitations? Then, begin consciously shifting your communication and thought patterns toward positive expectancy. This isn't about denying difficulties. It's about emphasizing possibilities despite them. It's about becoming the kind of person others want to bet on, invest in, and align with. As you consistently apply this principle, you'll find yourself becoming an increasingly powerful attraction point for the people, opportunities, and resources you need to achieve your most important goals. What once required tremendous effort will begin happening with remarkable ease, not because the universe is mysteriously responding to your thoughts, but because you've aligned yourself with fundamental principles of human psychology that have always governed success. Managing emotional energy, one of the most valuable lessons in life, is understanding where to direct your energy. So many people waste a tremendous amount of it on things they can't control or situations that never actually happen. They spend hours worrying, replaying negative scenarios in their minds, or imagining the worst possible outcomes. But let me ask you something. Has worrying ever truly solved a problem for you? Has stress ever brought you clarity or strength? Of course not. The only thing that worry and stress do is drain your emotional energy, leaving you exhausted when real challenges do arise. Instead, imagine operating from the belief that things will work out. Not because you're naive or unrealistic, but because you've trained yourself to focus on productive action rather than fear. You redirect your energy away from endless worry and toward real solutions. When you do this, something incredible happens. You conserve your emotional resources for the battles that actually matter. When a real problem presents itself, you meet it with clarity, strength, and resilience because you haven't wasted your reserves on imaginary threats. Think of it this way. If you only had a limited amount of fuel in your car for the week, would you drive aimlessly in circles, burning it up on unnecessary trips? No. You would use it wisely, ensuring that it gets you where you need to go. Emotional energy works the same way. You only have so much of it each day, and you have to decide where to spend it. Do you spend it on fear and doubt, or do you invest it in productive action? This is why the most successful individuals aren't necessarily the most talented or even the most intelligent. They are the ones who have mastered the art of emotional energy management. They understand that success isn't just about skill or intelligence, it's about endurance. It's about being able to stay in the game long enough to win. And you can't stay in the game if you're mentally and emotionally exhausted all the time. Think about people who give up on their dreams. It's rarely because they lack ability. More often than not, they burn out emotionally. They let fear drain them. They let doubt consume them. And before they know it, they're too exhausted to continue. But those who manage their emotional energy wisely, they last. They keep moving forward, not because they never face setbacks, but because they don't waste their energy on unnecessary struggles. Now, this doesn't mean you ignore problems or pretend that everything is perfect. No, it means you acknowledge challenges without being consumed by them. It means you take responsibility for what you can control and release what you cannot. When you do this, you put yourself in the best possible position to handle whatever comes your way. You stay strong, focused, and prepared, not weighed down by fear, but empowered by a mindset of resilience. So from this moment forward, start thinking about where your emotional energy is going. Is it fueling your progress or feeding your fears? Are you using it wisely, or are you burning it up on things that don't serve you? If you can master this, you will find that not only do things tend to work out, but you'll have the strength to handle them when they don't. The preparation paradox. Now here's something fascinating. When you act as if things will work out, you actually prepare better for challenges. That might seem counterintuitive at first, but let's break it down. A lot of people believe that expecting the worst will somehow make them more prepared. They think that if they anticipate every possible disaster, they'll be ready when it happens. But here's the truth. When you operate from fear, you actually become less prepared. Fear clouds your judgment. It overwhelms you. It makes problems seem bigger than they actually are, and it paralyzes you from taking the right steps. Have you ever seen someone so consumed with worry that they couldn't take action? They were so afraid of failure that they didn't even start. Or they spent so much time stressing over details that they never made a real plan. That's what fear does. It distorts reality and keeps you stuck. But those who operate with the belief that things will work out, they approach challenges differently. Instead of panicking, they think logically. Instead of freezing up, they plan. They say, all right, if this obstacle comes up, here's how I'll handle it. They see potential challenges for what they are, hurdles, not dead ends. They understand that success isn't about avoiding problems, but about being prepared to solve them. Let's say you're starting a new business. If you believe you're going to fail, you're likely to either give up before you start or operate from a place of desperation. You might rush decisions, play it too safe, or hesitate at critical moments. But if you believe your business will succeed, you approach it differently. You plan for challenges without letting them define you. You strategize. You think ahead without letting fear cloud your vision. And when obstacles arise, you don't panic, you handle them. Now, does acting as if things will work out mean you ignore risks? Absolutely not. It means you acknowledge them without letting them control you. It means you prepare for setbacks while keeping your focus on progress. When you do this, you create a powerful paradox. The more you believe things will work out, the more prepared you become. This is the mindset of the most accomplished individuals. They don't ignore obstacles and they don't pretend everything will be easy, but they also don't let fear dictate their actions. They move forward with confidence, knowing that preparation is their greatest tool. They don't wait for the perfect moment. They create it. They don't waste energy on worst-case scenarios. They use that energy to build their best-case scenario. So ask yourself, how are you preparing for success? Are you approaching challenges with fear or with strategy? Are you letting worry hold you back, or are you using it as fuel to create solid plans? If you shift your mindset and start operating as if things will work out, you'll find that not only do they often work out, but you'll also be far more prepared to handle anything that comes your way. Take control of your mindset. Manage your energy wisely and prepare for success with clarity, not fear. Do this, and you'll find that life has a way of rewarding those who are ready for the opportunity when it arrives. Resilience. Through reframing, in life, things don't always go according to plan. You set a goal, map out a path, take action, and then, bam, something unexpected happens. The deal falls through. The job you wanted goes to someone else. A relationship doesn't work out. And this is the moment that separates people who move forward from those who stay stuck. Some people take these setbacks as proof that life is against them, that they're doomed to struggle. Others, however, have a different response. They immediately start looking for the opportunity, the lesson, the hidden advantage in what just happened. That's the power of reframing. Reframing isn't about sugarcoating reality or pretending that difficulties don't exist. It's about shifting your perspective in a way that empowers you. It's about asking better questions, questions that lead you forward rather than keep you stuck in frustration or self-pity. Instead of asking, "Why does this always happen to me?" they ask, "What can I learn from this? How is this redirecting me towards something even better? What strengths am I developing through this challenge?" You see, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you habitually ask yourself. Most people don't realize this, but your mind is like a search engine. Ask it a question, and it will go looking for an answer. Ask a negative question like, "Why do I always fail?" And your mind will come up with all the reasons why you're not good enough. But ask a powerful question, a question that assumes a positive outcome, and your mind will start finding solutions, opportunities, and paths forward. Think of any great success story, and you'll see this principle in action. Take a business owner who launches a product and it flops. The average person might say, "Well, that was a failure. I guess I'm not cut out for this." But a resilient entrepreneur asks, "What feedback is this giving me? What do I need to adjust? How can I use this experience to make my next move even better?" That's why successful people don't avoid failure. They use it. They see every challenge as a stepping stone, every obstacle as part of their growth. Let's take a personal example. Imagine someone goes through a painful breakup. Now they could say, "I'll never find love again," and spend years stuck in regret and disappointment. Or they could ask, "What did I learn about myself in this relationship? What qualities do I want to cultivate for my next relationship? How can I use this time to grow?" Same situation, different questions, radically different outcomes. The truth is, life will throw challenges your way. That's inevitable. But what you do with them, how you interpret them, how you use them, that's entirely up to you. When you develop the habit of reframing setbacks, you turn life into a continuous learning experience. Every experience, good or bad, becomes a tool for your growth. And when you start seeing life this way, you develop an unshakable resilience. No matter what happens, you know you'll find a way forward. You trust yourself, and that trust, that belief in your ability to navigate challenges, is what makes all the difference. Living from the future, most people live from their past. Their decisions, their self-image, their expectations, all shaped by what has happened before. They look at their past mistakes, their past limitations, their past failures, and they use them as a reference point for what's possible. But what if you could live from your future instead? What if, instead of making decisions based on where you've been, you started making decisions based on where you're going? Imagine your life 5 years from now. Imagine you've achieved your biggest goals. You've built the career you want, the relationships you want, the lifestyle you want. That version of you exists. That version of you has already figured things out. Now ask yourself, what would that future version of me do today? What decisions would they make? How would they handle this challenge in front of me? This is not some abstract concept. It's a practical tool for making smarter, more aligned decisions. Because here's the thing, when you base your decisions on your past, you keep reinforcing the same patterns. You stay stuck. But when you make choices based on your future, you start moving in the direction of the life you actually want. Let's say you're considering a big opportunity, but fear creeps in. Your past self says, what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? But your future self has already succeeded. Your future self knows that taking this step is necessary. So you ask yourself, what would my future self do? And then, you act accordingly. You don't let fear dictate your actions. You let your future vision guide you. Think about high performers in any field. Athletes, entrepreneurs, artists. They don't operate from their past limitations. They operate from their future potential. They visualize their success before it happens. They step into that mindset before they have the external proof. And because they do that, they make decisions that align with their future, not their past. Here's another way to apply this. Let's say you're working on improving your health. Instead of saying, I've never been able to stick to a workout routine before, you ask, how does the healthiest version of me think? How do they approach fitness? What choices do they make daily? And then you start living from that perspective. You adopt the habits of your future self now, and in doing so, you bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. This approach gives you access to a level of wisdom and confidence that most people never tap into, because the truth is the answers are already within you. The version of you that has achieved your goals, that person already exists in the realm of possibility. Your job is to align your actions today with that future vision. To live from your future rather than your past, and when you do that, something incredible happens. You start making decisions with clarity and certainty. You stop second-guessing yourself. You step into a new level of confidence because you're no longer just hoping things will work out. You're acting as if they already have. And that shift in mindset changes everything. So, if you want to create a future that excites you, start living from it today. Make decisions based on where you're going, not where you've been. Trust in the person you are becoming. And when you do, you'll find that things start working out, not by luck, not by accident, but because you chose to act as if they would. The truth is, we all face the same fundamental choice every day. We can live as if the world is against us, or as if it's conspiring in our favor. Both beliefs will find evidence to support them. The difference is, one leads to a life of frustration and limitation, while the other opens doors to possibilities you can't yet imagine. I've seen this principle transform lives time and again. People who were once defined by their problems become defined by their solutions. Those who felt powerless discover their inner strength, and individuals who saw themselves as victims of circumstance become creators of opportunity. The most powerful moment comes when you realize this isn't about denying reality, it's about creating it. When you truly understand that your assumptions shape your experiences, you gain access to a level of personal power few ever discover. Acting as if everything works out for you isn't magical thinking. It's a strategic approach to life that's been proven effective by generations of successful people. It doesn't mean you'll never face challenges or that everything will always go your way. It means you'll respond to life's inevitable ups and downs from a position of strength rather than fear. The beauty of this philosophy is that it costs nothing to adopt, but pays dividends for a lifetime. It requires no special talent or background. See, only the willingness to choose a different perspective and practice it consistently. Remember, the circumstances of your life will always contain a mix of positive and negative elements. What defines you is not what happens to you, but how you interpret and respond to what happens. When you act as if things work out for you, you put yourself in the best possible position to make sure they do. Subscribe now for more life-changing wisdom delivered straight to your feed.